Move on.
Who is on?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Can folks on Zoom see and or hear us?
Yes.
Yep. Great, it's April 2nd. Guys, we missed April Fools by a day, fortunately. Wish we could meet outside. It's so beautiful out there. And does everybody know everybody? Do we need to do introductions? Seems like we have the usual suspects here.
Yeah.
All right. So welcome everyone, and we'll go over the agenda items. So we had a last minute shuffle on the agenda that we didn't get out. We didn't have time to change the agenda after a message from JB that she couldn't make the meeting tonight. And so we are probably going to have to postpone or at least scale back our discussion on the service rate costs, unless Amy and Peter wanted to talk a little bit about it. I'm not sure if we want to just postpone the whole discussion until next time, or if we want to have a not jump into the spreadsheet part of it that JB was leading last time, but if there's any updates on the gallons per day discussion that we had in the village as well, and if we want to shelf the whole thing until next time. Thoughts on Peter and Amy?
So I am prepared to give a little bit of an overview of the difference between design capacity and design flow, how we come to each of those things, and especially design flow and what it means. So I think we can do that for sure. If there are any updates about Linda's work with the bond attorney on language and timeline and school board, like I think we can have a good discussion about all of those other contingency things that are very important leading up to the bond vote and the school district's vote, but leave numbers and JB's beautiful rate sheets that I can't drive for the next meeting.
Yes, thank you. That's great, Amy. We can be able to discuss the design capacity and design flow. We'll leave that in lieu of the tiered rates discussion that we'll have to postpone until the next meeting in 2 weeks. Yeah, we do have an agenda item on the school and bond vote that yes, we definitely need to spend some time with. All right. Everybody have a chance to review last meeting's minutes?
Yep. I move to accept them. Second that.
Any discussion? Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are approved. And we can reshuffle the sequence of agenda items if folks would like to do that. I'll just go over the agenda quickly here to discuss our outreach. We had an article in the News and Citizen. We can discuss that. So this discussion, Tori was suggesting we have a discussion on whether or not we have a second informational meeting, or if we need to wait on that discussion. And we talked about the school vote and the bond vote and any updates there and that whole process and the hiring of attorneys. I put in a bullet there. Forrest had some material to share at the last meeting, wasn't able to make the last meeting regarding a potential consultant to assist with the ordinance and also a rate tool. And I don't know, Forrest, you want to still have that on the agenda and prepared to discuss that?
I wasn't prepared with it. I wasn't quite sure if it was something you'd want to do or not, but
And we kind of covered some of that in our last meeting related to JV's tool and when we got well along on the ordinance, unfortunately, you weren't here last time. And then what Amy was just sharing on design capacity versus design flow. Preference on sequence, folks? Are we good as listed? All right. Did folks get to see the News and Citizen article on Wolcott wastewater? And I thought Tommy did a nice job on it. I guess he wasn't in the room, but he watched the recording of our public roundtable meeting, and I thought he gave a pretty fair description of the event and got the details straight and had some nice quotes from people in support of the system. I guess he called it sewer in one of the titles, though. So that's my only qualm with this.
Wolcott Waste Watchers
Watchers, yeah, saw that
were
too.
last voters for newer sewer system.
Right, so a couple of little little issues there, but and I heard this morning in the sugar house boiling today, that someone was listening to WDEV, and I guess they have different newspaper editors featured each week, and Tommy Gardner was on. He was a featured reporter editor, and he discussed the Wolcott wastewater project on WDEV radio station. I didn't get any details of that radio piece, but I guess it sounded okay. So I saw Trisha did a nice front porch forum post yesterday. Oh, you're muted, Trisha.
Yeah, it was like last minute. I really thought I was gonna do it before I took off, and I don't know what happened. I just didn't do it, but so I got home and I was like, oh, damn, I never posted anything about this, and I was gone over a week. And so I said, well, at least if I just put it out there that we're having more meetings, I think just to keep it public eye. So yeah, we're good.
And you're doing about one a week?
Yes.
Okay.
The other thing is, I wanted to say when I heard Tommy talked on WDEV, that is fabulous, everyone. Okay, because what he wrote was good, so it's really good that he's talking about it publicly on the radio. I mean, as we all know, the more we can get this out there, it's going to be a win-win.
Agree.
Okay, thanks.
And maybe Tori and Seth might have input. Is there any plans for follow-up from Tommy on this, or maybe if we do another roundtable, he would be there, but anything in between?
I guess if the committee would like us to reach out to him, if you'd like an attempt at follow-up, we could do that. I think it definitely makes sense to invite him to the second roundtable if you do one. But if you'd like, to try to do a more detailed story or a site walk or something, we'd be happy to try to organize that.
Does WLTV still do where you could go in for 20 minutes and you talk about things? I've gone in when I worked on the cancer walk,
They do it via phone now, Linda. Yeah, they
Huh?
still do it. They do it via
Okay.
phone now. Yeah, it's
But they
good.
still do that?
Yep.
Be a
Yeah.
good idea.
That is everyone except me, listens to WLTV.
They interviewed me when I released an album, and they did 2 20-minute segments. They pre-taped in the studio, and I couldn't believe I got 40 minutes of radio time.
Wow.
And everybody, like you said, everybody heard it.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, so LVB might be a good.
Yeah, I think probably, yeah.
So WLVG might be.
I think it would be really good if someone went on and explained.
Maybe as we get more information on the rates and if we have any updated cost estimates ahead of a potential second roundtable, might be a good time to do that.
Right. I
Yeah.
think as you get real close, guys, like mid-May would be a good time to get on the radio, get people talking, make sure that we have another meeting after that, so somewhere in between, that we have a meeting or two before it, so we can invite people publicly
Mhm.
to any more meetings, they want to know information. The radio is fabulous. I mean, I go on and talk all the time, and I always get texts from odd people in the community that say, "Oh, I heard you on the radio." I have never heard myself. I've never listened to the radio station, so I can't answer it, but I do know it's very well received. The other thing is Dan Noyes, I had talked to him. He had stopped here at the house not too long ago, our representative. He told me he was going to do some write-up. He does something in the paper also, legislative update. But he said he would do something on wastewater, and I haven't seen it yet, so I'll prod him a little bit too, because there's certain people that follow what he writes also. And
That's true.
he's got a
Yeah.
lot of history back with this whole project.
Tricia, could you possibly send him our flyers?
Great
Yep.
idea.
I had told him to go right to our wastewater site, but this is good. I'll send him a note now and I will link him. So he's yeah, it's good.
That would be great.
Yep.
And our other representative, I can't recall, from Zach Wood's farm,
Yeah.
Carpenters.
Melanie.
Oh yeah, Melody Carpenter.
And then just Tricia, are you comfortable with topics to share each week? As
Yeah.
far as, yeah,
Tori,
Okay.
good. Her and I chat back and forth. Yep, we're good.
okay.
One of the things that Bradley brought, we were talking earlier, was that when it gets closer, to reminding people that they can request an absentee ballot.
Okay.
But wait until after, it's posted, mid-May.
Yep, okay. Just remind me again then, Linda.
Maybe, yeah, that might be good for our bond vote discussion.
Right.
Okay, so, and I don't know, Tori, if you have any thoughts on this, but Tori and I had a side conversation about potentially having this discussion. Are we ready to make a decision about a second roundtable? We kind of dance around this a while, or if we maybe we should set a hypothetical date if we do want to have that, when that would be, and even if we're not ready to make the decision yet, if we want to have it or not, just so we have a tentative date on a calendar. It's just kind of where I'm at. I don't know how other folks feel. Some of it's related to updated information from Amy and Peter and JB. And where we're at with that, and when we want to present that to the when and how to present that to the public. But maybe we could take
I'd
a look
set
at
a
our calendars.
tentative of May 21st. Oh, sorry. What do you think?
So the informational meeting, we have a tentative date, or I guess on June 4th for the required meeting. So I just want to distinguish between the required meeting and a second roundtable. So it would, if we want to coincide it with these meetings, it would have to be on May 21st.
It says our final outreach too.
That's on the,
So on May 21st, it says wastewater committee bi-monthly meeting, final outreach push.
okay, so we do have that, right?
Well, they all said, and the one before that, except two.
Yeah.
But
So we'll have a hold on May 21st. We're already having a wastewater committee meeting. And potentially, if we are going to have a second roundtable, it would have to be that night, or should be that night, I guess.
Yes.
Any thoughts on that discussion? Does anybody have any thoughts on if we should have one in addition to the informational meeting?
let's ride it, Jim. Let's get to closer to June 1st and let's see where we're standing and where we're all feeling and let's hear what the, talk around the community is.
I just want to hear from Tori. Tori, you kind of thought we should have this discussion sooner rather than later. Just your thoughts on why?
Well, for the last roundtable, we had talked about potentially offering an incentive for participation. If the conversation involved health equity components. So there would be gift cards and it might entice others to come and participate and learn about the project. That would have to happen before May 15th for that opportunity to be there, but it's also just worth considering that if absentee ballots are mailed, they would need to be mailed no later than 20 days before the vote, which is May 22nd. So it might be nice to have some sort of informational or roundtable before then. So if people are going to be voting before the mandated info sessions, they would.
So by May 22nd, the absentee ballots need to be mailed back to us.
That's when they can start going.
They can start coming. Okay.
Well, that's when people can start voting in office or absentee at home.
So the 21st would achieve that too. If it was a little sooner, there's other incentives. Yep.
So should we decide by next meeting? 2 weeks from today? Or we can push it to the following meeting, but that would only give us 2 weeks preparation.
You guys, let's put our heads back together on this one. Do you think we're gonna get other people than who showed up at the last meeting? Linda, you've done meetings for 50 years in Wolcott. Tell us.
I think,
More people will come to a second
Yeah.
roundtable. That's your question, Tricia.
Yes, it is.
Will more people come?
I'm not sure, but I think there's still a lot of outreach out there.
Needed.
I,
Will we,
well, it can be political, Say,
okay.
Huh. Okay. I agree, but I'm trying to think about this in the sense of, is there a better way than a roundtable to get the discussion out there more? I mean, I don't know.
Well, we also discussed having a barbecue or something like that.
Yeah.
It could be a different format than the last one and not a formal presentation, although, so I guess having the final numbers we can have for the informational meeting, it could be something more informal. And we can ponder some more.
Yeah. I see, I don't know, what did I just see something about them doing something with the Green Up Day maybe in Wolcott or something? Linda, are they doing something with the library there and stuff? I don't remember what it was. I know I just
they're
read.
doing something for the solar eclipse.
Oh, that's when it is. Okay, it's solar. Okay. No, I was thinking it was Green Up because that's usually a time that people come out. I'm just trying to wrap my head around like what interests people to come to meetings? And I don't know why I would even be concerned is the amount of town meetings that I go to, but it just seems like how are we gonna make it a really good draw? And maybe the gift cards are an idea, Tori, anyone who gets something
The
for free.
food is always the draw.
Yeah. I agree.
I know people that came just so they didn't have to cook dinner.
Yeah.
It wasn't for our dazzling presentation.
Well, they were like,
It was pretty good pizza.
We serve beer at the.
no,
Outside?
Let's bring a coffee cup.
Oh, great.
All right, so it sounds like we're not quite ready to make that decision
Yeah.
yet
Okay.
on if and what the format might be if we decide to. So we can give ourselves to our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks, or the following meeting, which is in 4 weeks. make that decision. And if we do 4 weeks, that would only give us 2 weeks preparation. Just keep that in mind. Okay, Linda, do you have an update on the attorney hiring for the bond vote of anything with?
Yes, we, Linda, through our three, bids that attorneys presented to us, and we have selected Robert Fletcher from Stitzel Page and Fletcher. I have emailed him, and I'm just waiting to hear back from him. I CC'd Tori, didn't I? Yeah.
Anything from the school board and any coordination of the school?
I just heard an email from the superintendent telling the school board attorney that he needed to start writing up a warning and coordinate with, the logistics with me. I sent you that email too, I think, didn't I? Yeah.
Can we maybe have a discussion with this committee on what's our ideal school board meeting related to our bond vote? And if we can express our preference to the school board, it's on, then maybe they're flexible. Does anybody have any thoughts on the coordination of the two? Vote, the meeting and the vote, our vote?
Somewhere I heard that they were thinking of having it the same night as our informational meeting.
So 2 weeks before
No, our informational
the
meeting
week,
is,
the information meeting on the week before. And how do folks think that would go if it was the school meeting to vote on the siting of the project being the week before the bond vote?
What would happen if they voted no on that by chance? That would be strange for the bond vote, right? Would we,
This would be dead, I guess.
It'd be nice to get beyond a poll.
well, it's like, I don't know, we want to have a.
We want to have it, can we?
I'm not sure whether we can push, how far we can push them.
Can we have it on the same day? Or is
Not
that,
in the same place.
they can have a school meeting up at the school and then the vote here?
They could.
Would it be better logistically as far as getting people to vote,
But.
to have it on the same day, or?
And the trouble is, graduation is on the 12th and they'll be setting up. So the school graduation, 6th grade is on the 12th of June. And I think they will be getting ready and be all dealing with that.
what does everyone in the community feel about like these two votes? Is the school vote gonna get less people than the bond vote or vice versa? Kind of assuming it's gonna be like a subset of people interested in voting are gonna come to that one. Does that make sense or does anyone have any thoughts or experience on that?
Well, I think that having a public meeting in the evening, you might not get too many people to come out. But whoever's there is the majority wins.
Right.
You know, people are busy this time of year with softball and kids and, you know.
Will more people likely that attend the in-person meeting be for or against the project is the bigger question.
I would guess at 4.
You think four?
If they made the effort. If they made the effort to go, unless there's a big thing where, you know, parents are all in a
Mhm.
You guys,
hissy about it, I think it would be a more positive vote.
Okay.
I think all of us here, anyone who's sitting in this room right now, who's a Wolcott resident, should say, I will get 10 people to go and vote. I mean, I work for Morristown. I know how we all play the game. Okay,
Mhm.
I would go up and down my neighborhood and I would call them personally and be like, Linda Brady, I need you to go vote. Please do it. And she'd say, yes. And I think anyone here, I mean, that's gonna be a good chunk of how many people actually vote on this. So let's stack our deck right.
I totally agree with Tricia,
Yeah.
except I would say 20 people. The question I think a more important question is, even if they're friends, neighbors, are they more likely to go sit in a school board meeting and then come here to vote in the same day or a
No.
week apart or a week apart?
They're not, the people right here that I would talk to on my road, they're not going to any meetings. They're going to vote because I told them it's good for our community. Okay, let's just be real about this. I know this.
So the vote
I mean-
here will be from 8 in the morning to 7 at night.
Right. And so, Linda, I'm thinking like, I'm gonna start with Becky Cutler, Becky Green down here. They're not going to any meetings. But I know I can convince her and her husband to go down and vote because it's good for Wolcott.
Well, it sounds like if the school board is set on their meeting being the same day as our informational meeting, so are we gonna have
They're not set on it, they just, I heard that.
are we gonna have concurrent meetings? So how do we deal with that? Like we are required to do the informational meeting. We can change the date, I guess, of ours, but if there's a school board meeting up there and there's an informational meeting here, how are we gonna, we need people at that meeting at the school.
We would meet in the same place, we would not.
See.
So
You
are they
have-
voting for the
We
school
would meet
board?
in the same place, either here or there.
So we would have our meeting before their meeting or something at the school?
I don't know, I haven't talked with them. Either
Or
before or
after.
after.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to talk to one.
But shouldn't we have our informational meeting before the school vote so they can have an updated presentation about the project, the health issues, the costs, so they're.
Yeah, makes sense.
Could we offer
Offer that.
Q&A at the school before? Sorry.
It's two different things though, and I think we need to be careful about that. I think that the wastewater team can offer information about the bond and what it's for and why the project is important. We can support the school district's vote on whether to allow the use of the disposal field on the athletic field. But I would caution us to be careful and planful about how we combine those things because they're two different questions to two semi-different but wildly overlapping groups of interested folks.
So when we're up there and they're holding their vote, we are not in charge. We are not talking. They are. It's their meeting. We are there just if they need to ask a question, but we're not doing a presentation or anything at their meeting.
So we can't
No.
technically have our informational meeting before their meeting then. In the same venue.
But we can. You adjourn your meeting
Mhm.
and then they start their meeting. But we do ours,
And
they
it would-
do theirs.
and it would have to
It's just
be-
the same people don't have to come out twice, that's all.
It would have to be at the school.
It depends on how many people you think would be coming, but probably the school would be better.
Well, the school's meeting is gonna be at the school. So then we're bound to be at the school.
Probably.
Might be nice to like meet them there. Like a gesture too, you know,
What do you mean meet them there?
just like holding your meeting in their space.
So if we had our informational meeting from 5 to 6, there was a little bit of a break and then they had their school vote meeting at 6:30 or something.
It's no different than town meeting. We do the same thing. We have the town meeting ends and then the school has theirs and those school directors come up and run their meeting.
Mhm.
But I think first, before we get into the weeds and try to tell them what to do, someone needs to have a conversation with them of what their thoughts are.
I just thought it would be a good idea for also us to have our preference before we meet with them. So we can present them with something. Because they're not gonna think about the coordinated voting for the siting vote and the bond vote. And so if we could logistically pull that off, Linda, of having it at the school on the same day as the informational meeting. So we'd have to do our informational meeting and that would answer a lot of the questions I think that the people would have that are coming in to vote at the site on the siting question. But then we'd have to have the people that are in support of this project come to our bond vote the following week. So we're asking them to go essentially to 2 meetings and fill out a ballot or do it by absentee. That would be good if if we got the people to come. Send in the apps, do the 2 meetings and an absentee ballot, so they didn't even have to come down here for a second day
Is there an absentee ballot for the school one too?
Now,
in person.
it
Yeah,
has to be in person.
Yeah.
What are the rules with absentee ballots? Can you deliver them? People have to come, request them and pick them up.
Only the voter can pick them up, otherwise they get mailed. Anyone can bring them back.
Okay,
I kind of like the idea of having our informational meeting at the school before the school meeting.
That sounds fine.
I don't know
I
how,
just wonder, are you asking me to coordinate?
no, I'm just, first, I'd like to get a sense in the room of what folks think about that. Folks on Zoom?
it works for me. I mean,
I would
think it's-
support combining the meetings.
That was you, Amy, and
Yeah,
I tend to agree. I think it makes sense. Especially considering that a lot of the folks that came out for the meeting last time were also supporters of the project, so that kind of bodes well.
Emily, do you have any thoughts from your past experiences working on these projects?
I think the less people have to come out, the better, right? In terms of, if they have to go to one meeting then to another on a different day and time, you're less likely to get people there. I think, we're going to support you in whatever you guys choose to do. But I think, having your meeting then theirs right after is helpful for the people that are voting after, who might not get the correct information since you guys can't speak at the school board one or at the
But-
school vote.
So Emily, but I get getting people to come to less meetings is better. The other combination is having the informational meeting, having the school citing vote meeting the same day as the ballot voting occurs. That's the other combination.
It won't work because they're having graduation.
I mean, I guess,
No, we're voting here, so
Okay.
you can't have the school.
we can't change the date of our vote. Yet,
No.
we can, I guess, but we've been telling everybody June 11th. So we don't really have a choice then, I guess. Unless we do 2 separate nights for the informational meeting and the school meeting.
you just be really careful about this, guys. You're talking early June. People aren't gonna come out. We're Vermonters. We're gonna be wanting to be out here in my garden. I mean, I know how many people on it just, all I'm saying is just be realistic about who you think is gonna come out. I mean, we all go to enough meetings as it is, and that's gonna be a hard sell two different times.
That sounds
And
like,
I think you're right. I mean, it's usually the same group of people that come to the meetings over and over.
I just want to give people in the room an opportunity to chime in that haven't chimed in.
I like that idea.
Thoughts,
It's reasonable.
Forrest?
Makes sense logistically.
Sorry, Steph?
I think doing your informational meeting and then the school vote meeting at the same location and kind of back to back makes sense. I think unfortunately your hands are tied that the school has to for vote. I think it would be more optimal if it could be on a single ballot.
Right.
But I think your hands are unfortunately tied on that. So that does. You are going to want to make sure that you do encourage people to come to that meeting.
And if we're doing this on a weekday evening, where my brain always goes is, we gotta figure it around dinners. If we're not serving food, we gotta figure the timing out. So these are all the things that I kind of want to have discussed ahead of time. Seems like I think this is a good plan. I don't know what the ideal time is. We can't really serve, I guess we could, refreshments up there at the school, or we just time it so they can eat dinner before or after.
Yeah.
If we're gonna ask them to sit through 2 meetings with an intermission in between. That's a lot.
There won't be much intermission in between, Jim. You're gonna run back-to-back meetings.
Just enough for a potty.
No,
break.
It's gonna be a couple hours at least.
No,
No.
you're way too long.
I mean, ours is gonna be, I thought ours would be an hour and theirs might be an hour. I don't know.
20 minutes theirs maybe. Ours shouldn't be more than 45. Let's be real here, everyone. People's time.
Okay, so it seems like we're all in agreement. It would be good to have it on the 4th, June 4th. So Linda, you're gonna have discussions with them, or is that how it's?
I'm just asking.
Okay. That would be ideal from the committee's perspective. And then we're gonna encourage arm twist 10 to 20 of our friends to come to that meeting. I like the idea of if we do a second roundtable, to have it less formal, like a barbecue or septic social or something like that, something fun, more fun, I guess, with information, but be able to answer people's questions as well. Okay. If we beat that one to death.
Yeah.
Final thoughts on that?
On the school vote process, but I think the town bond vote process, we have some items to talk about, but my last thought on the school vote process is, has the MOU been formally signed by both boards? It has been.
And recorded, I
Okay.
had it recorded in the land records.
Great, that's perfect. Would you mind sending a PDF to us too, just so we have it in the final version? It's signed, great. You wouldn't want turnover on the school board and then have to start an MOU from zero. So thank you for following through on that. Do you want to jump into the details of the town vote process? So Tori, do you want a little bit about schedule and some of the decision deadlines that are coming up?
Yes, I think I included the bond vote timeline sheet in your packet. I don't know that this made it online.
Yeah.
So May 2nd is the first day post warnings and other documents about the bond vote. So all the details need to be decided, including the bond vote amount. And the bond vote amount will need to be within that language that the bond council, Linda just offered the job to, for for the select board's consideration before May 2nd. The select board meets tomorrow and again on the 17th. So by April 17th, the select board should be considering the bond vote language. So it'd be ideal if the committee could perhaps provide an opinion on what they think and a bond vote amount might be reasonable to include in this.
And that we wanted to spend some time talking to you about tonight because, you know, the big challenge that Wolcott is facing right now with setting the bond vote amount is that there are several very large potential funding sources that you won't know by April 17th, by the time you have to set that amount. So I think there's a discussion about, for the committee to have, about how you set that amount. Do you go to the maximum the town might need? If none of those funding sources comes through, do you pick an amount based on what you think will be affordable to the community? And then a third option is, do you provide the voters an opportunity to vote on a, you know, smaller bond amount that may be more affordable if all the funding comes through, and also on a larger amount. So it would then be 2 articles for folks to vote on. For tonight, we thought, because this is a big decision, it might be worth the committee having a discussion of the question of what do you think the voters or the people of the community can afford and the voters would support, and maybe start from there for this discussion as kind of the first item of discussion, and then think about how do you structure the bond in a way that works around that affordability consideration.
So just to clarify, so you said April 17th,
April 17th.
we have to know the bond vote
Or May
amount.
1st would still work.
You could right, May 1st would still work. You'd have to have a special select board meeting.
No,
But, oh no,
But May 2nd is the first day to post the warning and everything.
well, the first, but you can sometime between the 2nd and the 12th.
I'm just, we have,
40 days is the soonest on the 2nd.
okay.
The latest is the 12th.
Okay,
Okay.
so May 1st.
I think you would be closer to knowing things on May 1st.
I don't think we're ready to have that discussion, Seth, because we postponed the JB spreadsheet discussion until next meeting. As far as the affordability question,
I don't think that's what he's asking now. How much are we lacking?
So, well,
How much would you need,
to me, they're
worst case?
tied together though.
700,000?
760.
Worst case with the funding sources that you don't know till later.
right, so the number, so what I'd like to just kind of for the committee to think about for a minute is that when you saw the numbers for a bond of $750,000 you all got very nervous about that, and about the town's ability to afford a bond of that amount. So the problem is you're not going to know your full funding stack by May 1. So I do think it's valuable for you to be thinking about what you feel comfortable talking to voters in Wolcott about supporting and what you think people are actually going to be able to afford. And that is definitely tied into, you know, the questions of the details of the spreadsheet and the details of the engineering and the funding stack. But what do you think the town's comfort level is going to be in terms of, is there a point where?
But I don't think we can answer that, Seth, without knowing how much, if we're looking at, to me, the capital and the service rate are linked here, because we need to know how much the town residents will have to pay on the service rate in addition to the capital costs when we're looking at those for the spreadsheet. But it just seems like those two discussions need, those need to go hand in hand.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the cost of the system at all variable? Can you bond for 500,000 or whatever you think you could afford, and you just build that much system, or is it really a fixed cost? Can't cut it back if you didn't get an extra grant?
It's a fixed cost, Bruce. There's not too many ways to scale it back that are significant enough in the cost to make a huge difference.
Personally, I think we have to ask for all the money that we're gonna need to get the system in the ground and up and running. I think it's great that, and I do think we probably will get further money, but you guys, I mean, this is a once in a lifetime chance for Wolcott. Yeah, it may cost a little bit of money up front, but when we come into this bond, if we don't ask for all the money and we don't have enough money to do the project, then we've all just wasted a lot of time, a lot of money.
Well, and I think Seth made a couple of points. I think having two bond vote numbers, the full cost, this full 760,000 versus a smaller number, people are obviously going to vote for the smaller number.
And
So
what do you do for
I
building it if you have a smaller number? How do you
don't think it's a good idea to have the two numbers on it, personally.
Most people want to know the worst case.
Do you have an idea about how to pay for it if it was a little?
Well, the scenario that makes me think of that is the scenario where there are people who support the project in principle, but see that bigger number and are concerned about their ability or the town's ability to afford that bigger number. And the reason I'm concerned about that was because when you looked at with the town cost getting up to 30,000-40,000, some of you started getting very nervous about that. So this is somewhat of a question for you, because you know your community better than we do, to Tricia's point, that the confidence that people will have if you go and tell them the worst case scenario is, let's say, $750,000. We're going to try to get more, we're going to try it where we're confident about grants that will lower that. Will that be enough confidence for voters in Wolcott to vote for that larger?
I think what you're asking us, Seth, is our confidence in securing these additional funds that we've already applied for. And I don't think we can answer that. I think maybe you and Tori and Emily might have a better sense of answering what are our chances at these different grants that we've applied for. And I have no idea. And I don't think folks on the committee have any idea of what our chances of getting that funding for us to be able to decide on a smaller amount. So unless if Emily and Tori and yourself want to chime in on your confidence level, I think we would have to rely on your levels of confidence for these other grants that we've applied for, because you guys applied for these grants.
And do we ever pick a number that's not a max number? That's pretty scary. Why not pick a medium number?
Because if we don't get all the grants, then we're not going to have enough money to build it.
We don't know what the cost will be.
If you word it in such a way where it's like, plan for your rate says your cost, then break down your capital separate. So worst case, people could see worst case with the worst case capital. And then with the operating. And then.
Well, this is separate.
But we're not gonna have the bond vote question will not have anything to do with the
And
operating
the-
costs. On the ballot,
But do the wording for the bond vote that you can. With the knowledge, with the wording on it, they can borrow up to, but minimizing. The amount of money needed.
I think if the wording is that this is worst case scenario or something, I don't know how we have to word that legally. But that's something to that
But
effect,
as needed.
Yeah,
as needed, yeah.
yeah. So I think the question is, I guess the question that I'm trying to ask is, so I think that there's going to be a body of voters who aren't going to be asking whether LCPC or DEC, have confidence in, securing grants. They're going to be thinking worst case scenario, you don't get any of those grants. Can we afford to do this? Or they're going to be thinking of, do we trust the people who are telling us, from the town that there's other funding out there and that this is the worst case scenario and it will probably be less. And I don't know the community enough to know if, the degree to which that could be a factor in this.
I mean, I have no idea personally.
Okay.
But you guys have been doing a fantastic job in grant writing and securing these
Yeah.
grants. I don't want to nix it.
Right. So I guess I'll say and Emily, please, if I'm being overly rosy, throw cold water on what I'm about to say, but in most environments, I would not be super confident or give you a lot of reassurances about additional funding coming through. And I'm more confident in this environment than I would be in others because the state is going to be redirecting, funding from, projects, other wastewater projects that don't go through. I can't guarantee that those funds will come to Wolcott, but I think your chances are better that happens now than at another time. But I can't guarantee that. So I think there's another question is there a point where you all feel you would be asking the voters for too much, or that by asking them for that amount, you would guarantee that the majority vote no? Because if there is a threshold like that, we should be aware of that for going forward from here. And I know this is kind of like making decision at twilight because you don't have some really critical information. It's more of the gut check of
And the folks in the room haven't been privy to separate emails going on, but I don't know if this is a time to mention the contact with the senators and
Yeah.
if you guys can share that discussion. And it's
Sure. So why don't we actually walk through like sort of the funding stack that's out there? There's what Jim is referencing is a potential additional request for congressionally directed spending to fill the full funding gap plus contingency. There's also the 1 point.
and how much of it has that
We have not
you've asked for?
What were we thinking, Tori?
For CDS.
For CDS.
Let's do April 8th.
That's due April.
765.
Huh?
The remaining gap in known costs right now, which is 765.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the same amount also as the northern borders.
Due when? April 7th? 8th.
Yep. That's due in April. Yep.
And what are our chances of getting that?
That is through Congress. So that is largely dependent on what happens. I mean, Lamoille County has had good success in those in the past. Jeffersonville was able to secure funding for their water system. The village of Johnson was able to secure funding for their garage last time. And the is clearly a lot of support for both rural investment and flood recovery that kind of converges on this project. And I think the discussions that we've had with the congressional staff make it seem like this something they would support. But there are 500 other people in Washington who get to make decisions about that. And these turn into bargaining chips for things that are completely unrelated to.
Okay, so it was my understanding that there was already allocated money that's out there that could potentially be reallocated. It's already in their hands that could be reallocated, but that's not the case. This is a new.
That's congressionally directed spending. What the pool you're talking about is the state ARPA that was dedicated to wastewater. Those you already received 2.5 million. The state's rules allow you to a single community to receive up to 4 million. So back in this time, was it fall? Without snow, it's hard to remember the seasons. But the town did put in a request for the additional 1.5, to get to the full 4 million. That will be dependent on other projects that have been allocated funds kind of not moving forward and how the state reallocates that money.
We won't know that till September, or that one, right?
We're not yet, right. The formal decision on that will be in September. Is that true, Emily, or is it possible that's moved forward?
It is possible that you could hear before June, but it's not guaranteed at this point.
Possible. Well,
So it's possible. And
I
then
would say as long as you guys keep moving forward, get the positive bond vote, I think there's, a good chance that you guys could get some additional funding. I just don't know how much and when.
And so and then there's the Northern Borders Regional Commission, which is also 7, right? Or it's the same number as the congressionally directed spending. So then and what Emily just said is kind of the key here is that you'll probably get more money, but you're not sure how much. That makes setting this bond amount challenging because want a positive bond vote to be in line to get that potential additional money, but we don't know how much, and we're not going to likely know by the time you have to set the amount. So
You ever give the people that information, like, look, it could be this, could be that. That's the best we can think. Would we ever feed that to the voter?
So there's let's say the cleanest way to approach this would be to do that 750 bond vote and then do a really heavy information campaign about all of the funding that's out there and why you think that's the maximum worst case scenario. That would probably be the cleanest. The question that you raised earlier is, do you hedge and do a smaller amount that you think people are more likely to be able to support, the town's more likely to be able to afford? I know this is like boxing in the dark. I know that.
But Seth,
Yeah.
can I just ask something about this here? We want this to happen. We need
Yes.
to ask the amount of money to make this happen. We do
Yeah.
need to express to the community, like we have these other funding sources that, we didn't get an answer on yet. They're coming down the pike. We're very hopeful, but we need to tell our community that the bond vote is high because this is the amount of money that we have to make this happen. I don't know why we're mincing around about a lesser amount, a more amount. We can't, guys. If we're gonna have to make this happen, we have to make it happen.
Yeah. If that's the committee's feeling, if that's how you're all feeling, then go for it and we'll help you go for it.
I don't know any other way. I mean, I don't sometimes didn't quite understand why we keep going back and forth about it. Peter said very clearly, there's no shaving on this project. It's a project and it's gonna cost, $4 million. That's what it is.
And we can make it clear that as part of it, we're trying to get as many grants to lower it as we can. Which put what we've applied for with it, so. It is the worst case, but it could be less.
I agree with Tricia.
Okay,
I don't know how others feel about it, but
I do, and I don't know if you're taking this because of my comments at the last meeting. But it was the town, we were paying for the
Mhm.
bond and then we have to hook on.
yeah,
That's and all, and then you want us to subsidize all these people, and that's what it got to be too high.
okay,
That's what,
yeah.
well, part of that was this, obviously the service,
The,
O and M costs.
right, the attempt is.
That the town would have to pay. So that's why I was trying to tie these two together.
Right, no, and that's really helpful. And this is actually helpful to that discussion for next time, Jim, because we need to know what number to plug into the bond amount number to show you on that spreadsheet. And it seems like we should start with the 750,000, which is probably your maximum. Do I have that number right, Tori? Or is it
765.
765? So,
Can I ask you a question about that? Is that the max number so we're given a cost of 4 million, that's the number between what we have for grants and the 4 million? Or is that a number, how does the real cost of the system play into this? It could be more, it could be
So-
less.
That's a good question, Bruce, because I was about to chime in. Just to remind everybody, Stone is kind of refining our opinion of probable cost that's in the preliminary engineering report. Now that we have an ability to kind of advance this project a little bit more. So by the 16th, we might actually come back to you with a higher or lower number, depending on what we're finding, probably higher. So the number could end up being more than the 760 with the spread of the total cost versus what we have for a funding stack.
It was
So,
by April 16th.
oh, April, yeah, sorry, I misspoke, yeah.
right, so by April
Next meeting.
So let's have that as the placeholder for now.
But just to Peter's point, if that 765 sounds like that number is going to need to go up. Which,
Well, I don't know, let's just wait to talk about it next time. I'm just saying, like, let's not get too hung up on the 765 tonight.
Yeah.
is there any wiggle
And-
room on
and
the?
we have contingencies in there. We just want to look at it again. There may be places we need to tweak it. The truth of the matter is, until the project is fully designed and or out to bid, we won't really know what it costs.
Right.
So that's why we have pretty large contingencies in the cost estimates. So.
Right, I was wondering if the 50% contingency does it have to be 50%? That's very high. I know there's a lot of variables these days with inflation and the materials costs and Amy.
Right.
The rate spreadsheet that Julie Beth was sharing with you last time has two different contingencies in it on the construction cost. The one that's in the preliminary engineering report is a 20%. There was also a 50% offered. The 765 comes from the 20% contingency.
Oh, the 765 is 20%. Okay.
Yes.
And sounds like we would be going with the 20% contingency for the bond vote number and not the 50% contingency.
Yeah, once Peter
that
comes
meant-
back with a
You're
closer.
not ready to
figure.
tell us.
Yeah.
I'm not the engineer.
And 20% is normal, isn't it, out there? It's everything I've ever seen, been 20%.
Well, I mean, Emily might want to chime in on sort of the Water Investment Division's recommendations. But in general, the pricing and costs that have been coming in over the last 3 or 4 years have been so widely variable that to be conservative and ensure that we have enough money, the WID department is recommending much larger contingencies than we historically would have used. 20% 5 years ago would have been totally normal.
Yeah, we ask for 30% at this point
Okay.
is what we're typically asking these days.
So we could potentially be asking. If we even just going from 20 to 30%, if the numbers don't change. Going up to maybe 1 million, we're circling back to Seth's concern about, are we asking too much? Of the taxpayers on the bond vote, if with a lot of hypotheticals.
Right.
And yeah. And I'm not suggesting that you are, it's kind of a getting your feel on, go ahead, Tricia, start.
I was just gonna say, Jim, it's not, you wouldn't be up at 1 million, you're adding 10% more. We've already got 20 built in. And if it's Emily's suggesting that we do 30%, I mean, we need to put the 30% in. I mean, it's not, this isn't, playing Russian roulette. Cost is cost. And
Well,
if we're gonna do it, we have
30%
to
of
do it.
30% of 4.3 is, it's not another 10% on 765, it's.
4 point, oh, okay, yep, 10%, okay.
Yeah.
So it is around 1 million, yeah,
Just
What can we-
be truthful, put in what we need.
I agree.
And be truthful, put in what we need and tell the people we're working on this grant, that grant. Look what we've done already. Isn't it amazing? And, we can still keep working. We got a couple more years to work on more grants.
You do.
It's not the end.
But we have to get people to vote for it too.
Thank you.
Well, that's how we're gonna present it. We're gonna tell them.
Amy?
We're gonna find them.
10%, your 10% of construction cost is about 483,000. So that's the delta that you're talking about between
brings us over
20% and 30%. So yes.
It'd probably be better to tell them the actual number than to not and have to ask for money later, because it's not gonna go well.
But Alan, there isn't an actual number.
So you will have, wait, Peter, you think you'll have the,
An updated number by the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll have an updated number by next meeting, but let's remember that we are not, this bond vote, the way the timing is working, this bond vote doesn't allow us to be as far along in the engineering as we could be or would like to be to really have a very refined number. So
yeah.
And for clarification, Emily, is the 30% recommended by DEC or required for this grant, for the grants?
This is across any of our projects. It's recommended. We would prefer to see it.
And so, what I'm hearing is, build the bond articles toward the maximum worst case scenario and build the public outreach strategy towards explaining that you're building toward worst case scenario and all the work the committee is doing to secure grants and the success you've had to date. That's kind of the conclusion I'm hearing from this discussion. Is that and what you're all feeling? Is there
Unless if we thread the needle and even if depending on what Peter's updated numbers are for the next meeting, I'm just thinking that the 20 versus 30%, that's 400.
It's a big difference.
1,000. That's a lot. That's 50% more than what we're asking for now, even though it's a 10% contingency difference. That I wonder if there's some wiggle room in keeping it at 20%. It's a little bit of a gamble, but knowing we're going to get something of a grant, I would think, between everything that Seth and Tori just listed, and being able to one of those grants to incorporate the 10%. 10%. It's a little bit of a dice rolling, but to me, that's asking for 50% more than what we've been sharing so far. Just to go up to 30% is a big ask, and that doesn't account for any additional numbers that Peter might come up with for next meeting.
Emily, I wonder if you have any scenarios you could share from your work across the state or that you've heard of where communities maybe didn't bond for enough, and kind of talk through the process when that happens? I'm assuming it just means another bond vote, but has that been disastrous to other projects, or is it generally worked out okay?
I think the closest one I can kind of talk about maybe be like Heinsberg. So they, bonded for a specific amount. The engineers did the project cost estimates, and the bids came in significantly higher than the project cost summaries and the bond amount. So then they had to go back and basically kind of do an engineering evaluation to get the costs down to where it needed to be. So it's definitely a gamble. It's probably better to bond for a little bit more than to have to ask. We can't fund a project that's not whole from a funding standpoint. So I think it is a bit of a gamble to take, but it's when Amy and Peter submit the PCS, we're gonna kind of expect that it has the 30% in it. But it's really a town decision on how much you want to bond for.
And Emily, just for clarification, my rolling the dice analogy is not in the cost of trying to think the cost is going to be lower, but my optimism in us securing some of those grants. I wouldn't want us to negotiate down the cost of the project, but my optimism in securing some of these other grants is where what I meant.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
no, it's okay. It's a gamble. The town, it's a gamble. I think it's good to have hope and optimism. Absolutely. I just don't know how all the grants are going to play out.
I think
when it comes, time for the project to go out to bid. If it's not secure, if your funding is not complete by bidding time, let's say, you just wouldn't be able to construct the project. So
I mean,
this is a big, I know for me personally, this is a big blow for us to hear that we're at a 20% contingency and we need to be at 30% or strongly recommended, and that's going to increase what we're asking for by more than 50%. This is the big news tonight, and I'm just worried about the sticker shock effect of that. And I don't want to lose the vote because of that, I guess. That we are gambling here. We're gambling that we may or may not get the grants. We're gambling that we may or may not have enough for the project. But the biggest gamble is we got to get this across the finish line. So we have to weigh all of these things, I think.
Yeah, it seems like the percentage is a bit arbitrary. We just don't know. And to peg it at the maximum has always bothered me. Statistics would have it that it should be somewhere else other than the absolute maximum.
well,
If we knew what those statistics were.
there's a case in Heinsberg recent, like the last year. They were up to their 20-year upgrade for their whole wastewater lagoon. They were short like $5 million or something like that on the cost estimate. So they're gonna have to go re-engineer and do a whole new bond process just to upgrade their wastewater plant, and the number's already 15 million before they started.
And we don't have time.
Yeah.
We do not have the time to do that, to go back. We have to
Right.
do it the first time right,
Okay,
is my
Yeah,
feeling.
that's a good point, Linda. There's
You
really
don't.
not gonna be a lot of wiggle room in getting this thing built.
Is it better to beg forgiveness on this thing later?
Beg for forgiveness.
So-
No, I mean, you're just, you set some amount, you do it. If it goes over, then you deal with it.
Yeah, but we
Maybe not by a
don't
bond.
have the time, because we have to spend this ARPA money by December of 2024.
Right, so you'll spend your ARPA money. You'll come up short,
The
you want,
whole project has to be completed as part of the ARPA funds.
Yeah, it has to be obligated by the end of this year, and then the project has to be complete by the end of 2026.
so what if you ran out of money? What would happen? Would you not get the funds? If you couldn't quite complete it, if you were $100,000 short?
100,000.
Oh, so you're building the project.
Bruce, you can't be short any money.
you're gonna have
Okay,
to
we
borrow
have to
again.
secure all the money. This is a town project. This
Yeah.
isn't something like building my house and I didn't have enough for my flooring. It's not that kind of project.
Well, if it has to be certain, then you better make 100% or something. You know, it isn't certain at 20, it isn't certain at 30, you
Right.
know.
No,
You have to deal with the
I-
uncertainty is all I'm saying.
I understand that part, but Emily's saying we have to have a 30%. I think that's what we have to have. I mean, I don't like the figures either. I mean, I live on the hill, I pay a high tax in town, but I look at this as a change of the town of Wolcott. This is going to be, it's for the good of us all. And I don't see any other way besides saying this is the maximum amount. And we have these other grants down the line as we're moving forward. Jim, I agree with you. It's a blow, but look how far you've come with this project.
So it's up to us to explain to them that we might not need it. And we
Right.
might not end up borrowing it. We might not have to pay it back because we didn't take it out, but it's there for protection. That's what it's there for,
Yeah.
but it's really up to us to explain all this to the voters. Maybe we need another round table and an informational meeting,
Well,
but
I think we
But
we
this-
won't know until Peter comes in with his new numbers and for the next meeting is.
And try to get a good sense of what the
It's not gonna be anything less than what we see here, I'm sure.
Well, just in the contingency alone, unless for some reason the capital project of the overall project has gone down, but the contingency has gone up and it's a wash. It seems like it's gonna go up, no matter how we slice it.
So Peter, that they'll likely have that for the next meeting. And
Yes.
yes, and the principle though is show the voters the worst case scenario and explain what you're doing to make sure that's the worst case scenario. That's the principle. I think that this is going to inform your next round of public outreach. Everything you're saying makes sense to me. But I think you're going to have to be very clear to the voters about all of these points.
The question said this, how do we set that worst case figure? We don't know. Will we know, Peter? How do you set that worst case estimate?
Current funding stack, total project cost as I present on the 16th. Which sounds like we'll bump up to a 30% contingency minus current funding stack is the difference that the town potentially has to take a loan for.
And then there's contingent bond language in the article that usually is something like subject to federal and state reduction by federal and state grants and aid. That makes it clear that it's a not to exceed, and it will be less if there are federal and state grants and aid to apply against it.
And if you don't need all the contingency,
Correct.
That's where I think the outreach could be good and try to keep it simple and concise in a message. Cause let's face it, even another roundtable, you're probably still gonna get, the same, maybe a few different of the 40 people that want to come out to the meetings. So some sort of simple messaging, either on Front Porch Forum or elsewhere, that explains that this is kind of the worst case scenario, I think would go a long ways.
I just think there's gonna be a lot of sticker shock when we were going over the scenarios with the assessed value of $200,000 or $300,000 house of jumping from $765,000 to 1.1 or 1.2 million. Those, we can play with those numbers next meeting, but that in itself, not even considering the some prorated service rate that the greater town residents are paying for. That's going to be quite a wallop, even though a lot of it's hypothetical and worst case scenario. But I guess we should probably move on the agenda. Amy, did you want to have just jump ahead to the design capacity, design flow discussion?
Sure. Is it possible for the host to let me share my screen?
You should be able to now.
Yes. So what I have put up on the screen, and don't feel like you need to step over and squint and read it. I will provide this after the meeting to folks as well. But this is the big picture of design flow versus designer system capacity. We've been throwing around a whole bunch of different numbers, and I thought, and Seth and Tori thought that it might be helpful to define our terms a little bit and provide you with some better background about what we mean when we say design capacity, design flow. Like, what are those fancy terms? What are we actually talking about there? So design capacity is about your disposal field. And it is really simply the gallons per day of wastewater that we can load up and discharge to groundwater from that system in any given 24-hour period. It's about the soil conditions and the size of the disposal field in the biggest picture sort of sense. For our proposed drip field at the elementary school, we've got a little bit over 1.25 acres of area that could be devoted to wastewater treatment. And you put that through the indirect discharge rules capacity Jenga, and you come out with about 19,250 gallons per day of capacity. The other side of that coin is design flow. And that's about your users and how much wastewater they need for a single family residence, a retail store, a restaurant. It's the quantity of wastewater gallons per day that is needed to support any or all of those uses. It's specific to individual properties. And in Vermont, it all comes down to the small scale rules, section 1803 and table 8.5, I think, which is a ridiculously long table that tells you for each use, how many gallons per day do you need to be able to support that use. In the preliminary engineering report, what we came up with, this is appendix 3.2 if you really want to dig, the design flow for all existing uses that might connect to the village system is 18,230 gallons per day. So the delta between existing uses and total system capacity is not super big right now if everybody were to connect at book flow. I'm going to stop right there and see if folks have any questions.
Quick question, Abe, does that account for the buyout houses?
Yeah, right now this is not, this is all addition, no subtraction. So there could, if those three, I don't know how many I've lost count.
6, 7?
7, okay. So the amount of capacity available would end up being, if all 7 go, you're looking at I'm gonna skip down a little bit.
1,500?
Because, yeah, it's about that. It would be 245 gallons per single family residence.
1,715.
Times 7.
Was it- was it
1,715,
7, Linda? And
all seven,
one was outside the village, I think, right?
6. So that would be about a little under 1,500 gallons per day that would become available for
That's
other
6.
potential uses. And I didn't explain at all what I was doing on this fancy spreadsheet. But what I was doing there was taking this, and I'm going to provide this to everybody afterwards because I know there are other scenarios and questions that people have, and this will kind of let you turn the knobs on things and answer some of your own questions or questions of potential folks in the village who just want to know. I have this, what capacity, what design flow would I need? I want to do this, what design flow would I need? So going just from left to right across the top of this, there's a description of the use, what are the details of how this thing is calculated, calculation units, how many gallons per day per each of these units you need, and then design flow units. And this does fancy math, gallons per day times number of units over to your design flow. And there's a whole bunch of options in here for folks to explore if they have time and interest, or if folks have specific questions about particular design flows. I can potentially help answer those questions now.
So I mean, the long and the short of it is we have about 1,000 gallons per day extra surplus, not including the 6 buyouts.
That's correct. Assuming that every user in the project area connects. That's right.
And including the commercial.
Yep.
Building, yes, in
Yeah.
addition to the residential.
Yes, and municipal institutional uses. A thing that it might be worth just opening up a little bit for discussion is this is assuming that every user is sort of frozen in time in their design flow basis and nobody wants to do anything different if there's an opportunity for them to do something different as part of this construction project. So what you may find as if the bond vote is approved and as folks really just start thinking about their opt-in or opt-out possibilities, you may find folks who want to do something different that have more want than they have capacity at present. And I think that's possible, but I can't predict where those are.
So if the Nazarene Church, for example, wanted to put in a 3 or 4 unit housing unit instead of a church, that would bump up what we would need for gallons per day, but we have a little bit of surplus now. And then plus the surplus from the buyouts. So what we gain in the surplus from the buyouts, we may lose in that 1 or 2 conversions to other uses and what MSI might want to do at their building or at the store or something like that.
So you haven't taken into consideration, MSI, developing that or?
The schoolhouse next door.
MSI and the schoolhouse are in this table in the preliminary engineering right now as their existing uses.
As
And
what?
as their existing uses.
So
and
can
we
I chime in a little
Oh,
bit?
yeah, sure, absolutely.
So at the last meeting, everyone was a little bit confused about the MSI design flows. And we confirmed it is about 1,500 gallons per day is their current flow. So it's not currently as insignificant as folks maybe thought. That there's quite a bit they could do with those flows. Pretty clearly, based on the location there and the amount of space they have, that system is pretty substandard and probably would not hold up very well to 1,500 gallons of real flow. Amy, I am a little curious of what you're showing us right now in terms of bedrooms and flows. This would be like if you were designing a system in your backyard, what the flows would be, right?
Yeah, what this is giving you is just single line scenarios for one thing. It's not intended to be additive. And that's why one of the things in here is the bottom residential line is really our situation for the village system, where you're going to have more than 20 residential units connected to a single disposal system. And what that means is you get 245 gallons per day per living unit, regardless of the number of bedrooms. So that gives you some flexibility. Maybe you're adding an accessory apartment to a 3-bedroom house. That doesn't necessarily increase the design flow that you need.
So for your public outreach, especially to people in the village, this is a really important point, because for all of them right now, their bedrooms are limited by their existing on-site wastewater permit or lack thereof. And in the case of a lot of people, it's their lack thereof. So for a lot of the homes, you know, along 15 or School Street, if they want to add a bedroom, a mother-in-law apartment, they're going to need to get a wastewater permit from A&R, and they're probably not going to be able to get one. With this system, they will not need an additional permit from A&R, and they will not need an additional allocation from the town. So there is immediately, for every single family homeowner in the village, additional flexibility they get from being part of this system that also has the potential to translate to the additional grant list growth for that investment. I'm seeing Amy nod, so hopefully I'm right about how this works. So while you do have that very limited, you know, or somewhat limited additional capacity, for the majority of the property owners who are single family homeowners in this village, there's still quite a bit new they will be able to do with their property after the system is built that they're not able to do. Does that make sense to folks?
It was what you're saying, that 1470 gallons per day is essentially allocating the surplus in design capacity to the residential units so they could expand bedrooms or apartments, is that?
So so once you get to the system serving 20 or more units, you no longer worry about bedrooms for individual homes. So 245 gallons per day is the allocation for that house across the street as it is today. And if they decide to add a mother-in-law apartment above their garage, it's still 245 gallons per day. They don't have to go get
Seth,
more.
I think we might want to check on that. It's per residential unit, so I think you get a little bit screwed on the 1-bedroom apartment scenario because you don't actually get a savings on those. So if the town had an abundance of one bedrooms, then it's actually going to start chewing into the capacity in a not great way. But overall, your point is very valid. Like you could easily go from a 3 to a 4-bedroom, 2 to a 3, like number of bedrooms in a unit don't matter.
So not necessarily, so check what I said there, not necessarily a full mother-in-law suite with its own kitchenette and, all washing machine and all of those things, but an additional bedroom in the house. Right. That's the thing you can do now without a additional wastewater.
The other point that Ed made before is you could drill a well, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people need wells. They can't drill them because of their septic system location.
They could sell their house, yeah.
So to add a quick another layer of the complication of this discussion, and one of the things that we've been kind of discussing in terms of rates is there's design flows, which is what is the accounting that I have to use to say what's going to go into the system. and what Amy needs to say the soils can accept as the hydrogeologist. But that doesn't mean that the town needs to charge somebody with a 1-bedroom apartment the same as a house with a 3-bedroom house. So that's a little bit of a nuance where, you know, I think in most of Julie Beth's models, we're talking about a smaller fee for smaller apartments, just to kind of make that fairer.
And what if in the scenario, MSI wants 3,000 gallons per day instead of 1,500 gallons per day? They would essentially take all the surplus allocation in that.
That's right.
In that scenario.
Yeah, just to remind folks, you know, this is the alternative that the committee chose, you know, this time last year. And with the addition of advanced treatment, pre-treatment on this system, we would be able to significantly bump it up. So, granted, you got to figure out how to pay for that in another phase, but we are designing the system for that. So there's at least you're not boxing yourself into, hey, we're making this decision, there's no way Wolcott could ever grow. You're taking a reasonable first step. Amy and I have talked about this a little bit recently, like it will certainly cost a fair amount to add that pre-treatment, but it's not like an unreasonable number. And I don't have anything, what was it, Amy, like $400,000 or $500,000?
It was between 300 and 500. I actually can give you that in a second. Keep talking.
I had one more question I wonder what the typical flows are versus the max flow or whatever. Do we have any sense anywhere of what the typical flows will be?
Good
Especially
question.
related to the MSI question, Peter, that you said that MSI is probably not using anywhere near the 1,500 gallons per day, because if they were, it would be stressing their system, right?
Well, their uses are, I actually would need to do some digging to figure out how they ever historically were able to call themselves 1,500 gallons a day. I don't know offhand how they got that kind of as their baseline historic use. It seems unreasonably high for something that was essentially always a warehouse. But yes, Bruce, generally these design flows are extremely conservative. The 245 number is allowing for some kind of, let's call it flow equalization and taking away some of that conservatism. Meaning if you had a 4-bedroom house, that would be, and you had your own septic, that would be 490 gallons per day. If you had a 3-bedroom, it would be 420 gallons per day. The idea with a community system is that not everyone is going to be stressing their system at the exact same time necessarily. Some houses are going to have less people living there. Some people are going to have their, you know, folks visiting on different weekends. Some people are going to be morning shower people. Some people are going to be afternoon shower people. It kind of, having that many houses allows things to be equalized a little bit. With that said, in general, most of these systems that are designed to these design flows are using significantly less. And that goes along with the discussions that we've had before, which sort of suggests that over time, we're required with the permit to be recording and monitoring how much flow is going into that system. So over time, we might be able to demonstrate that we are using significantly less than design flow, and that might actually allow us to free up some capacity.
It's nice to know what that average is somewhere, some town. But
Amy, do you have any comments based on Warren or other communities?
Yeah, so one example that, because I am this old in Vermont wastewater years, have watched grow up and age is Warren's indirect discharge system That one was designed for 30,000 gallons a day and built in 2003, 2004. Now it is receiving between 10 and about 18,000 gallons a day, depending on whether or not there's COVID and whether or not it's ski season.
What was the design?
It was designed
What
for
was the design capacity?
30,000.
60?
30.
30, okay, so 18.
So they're half of,
Close to half.
okay.
Yeah.
Their long-term average is 12 to 14,000.
Can I highlight the 3.5 things? Which Amy knows is my way of saying I'm not actually sure the number of things I'm gonna highlight, but so you have 2 ways to kind of grow beyond that 19,000 gallons per day. You have, or you have the pretreatment, which would actually, for additional cost, add new capacity because you'd be able to put more water into the soils because they'd be treated before they got there. That's a potential future expense for the community. Then you have this other option, which is the monitoring what's actually going in to this, to the disposal fields through metering, a master meter, and then going back to the indirect discharge permitting to recognize that your actual flows are a lot less than your design flows. But then you also have this kind of built-in those capacity allocations that's a little bit unique to Wolcott. You have your major downtown block currently permitted for probably more than they're using because it's still mostly warehouse and dry good and office in there, and then a lot of vacant space. So the Bucks buildings, MSI buildings will actually be able to be used up to the flow that in theory they're permitted for, but they're not doing. And so that still is investment that can happen in your village that maybe is legal now, but maybe not entirely wise for the town or the property owner. And then you also have this flexibility for the single family homes in terms of additional bedrooms. So there's a variety of ways, even though you do have a limited capacity on paper for the grand list growth that you're trying to get through this system, you still have quite a few ways to get there. Does anything that I just said scare any of the engineers and scientists?
No, and lastly, there are some potential rule changes that might help the situation too, that I don't really think is appropriate to dive too deep into right now, but could help us.
Anything else, Amy? Peter? On this topic?
Nope.
I will send the spreadsheet forward to folks if they want to play with it at their leisure.
Thank you, Amy.
Mhm.
Maybe for Forest's benefit.
Yeah.
Tori, you kind of led that discussion and the editing of the ordinance. We can start with that. Forrest had a person that he recommended that potentially if we needed a consultant to help us develop the ordinance, the septic ordinance, that he had someone in mind. But how are we feeling about where the ordinance is right now after the last meeting that when we worked on? Are we in pretty good spot with it and having a draft ordinance in place, except for the rate discussion that we were continuing?
I think you had all your general
Yeah.
policies solidified.
So
So just, putting it in legalese is next, but I think you're in a good spot.
I had a question about housing units that were in a commercial building. So if I build a bunch of housing units down there, how do those get Houselors pay. What's the rate for housing, a commercial business that has housing units?
We haven't
Versus-
set the rate. We haven't set the rate.
I think that's something that was getting a little convoluted in what Julie Beth was presenting, and
Yeah,
Amy and I
that's- you're
spoke
right.
about this. Sorry, I didn't hear what somebody said. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Are they treated as housing units or are they treated as commercial?
I think that's a policy decision that the committee needs to decide on. I personally do not think housing should be viewed as commercial, even if it's tied to a commercial property. But because you want to encourage housing. I mean,
Are you, in the example that you guys are talking about, are you thinking of a store on the first floor and apartment, a house above or how?
They're looking at stores, apartments.
Right.
Would be all residential, but the store would be commercial.
right.
Thanks.
So I know first you weren't prepared.
I can talk, so
Okay.
I was confused. I thought even if I had like a rate ready, I haven't put any.
No, just a background, Forrest had some rate design tools. And I thought he wasn't able to come to our last meeting when we were discussing that with JB's spreadsheet, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to share what you had.
Thank you. I apologize for missing last time. The University of North Carolina Environmental Finance Center has a utility rate tool. It's free for everybody to use. It doesn't take place of a rate study. Rate study is still the best way to determine a rate, but this is all user defined input, so we would need consumption data, financial data. We would have to have some O&M costs. This tool can be used to determine different rates, compare it versus current rates in the state. Not every town has a wastewater system, but there are rates on there, so we can compare what current rates are just to get an idea. It's nothing foolproof, but it's just something to compare to. So I just wanted to offer that. It also comes with a spreadsheet I think I sent to you.
Right.
That would take some engineering data points to whip something up.
Could I ask you first, I think you only shared that with me and maybe Linda. Could you share that with Amy and Peter and JB especially to see how that lines up with JB's spreadsheet that Amy and Peter have provided a lot of information for?
I can do that.
Because to see if there's some things we might be able to combine from both techniques possibly, or have different scenarios and two different tools.
Yeah.
And there was a second tool too, wasn't there? That
What? So there was two things for UNC. One was they actually had the spreadsheet, and that one's like it's a living sheet. It has like drop downs and mess with. The other one's the UNC website that has the state of Vermont with red dots for every. Is that what you?
Yeah.
So they're both UNC though.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Amy and Peter are familiar with the tool that Forrest is talking about.
I'm a little familiar with it. I definitely have spent some time in the Vermont section of the web-based tool looking at comparative rates for water and wastewater systems in the state.
I think
It would be interesting to compare, when the numbers compare what is gonna be
This state is.
cost estimated with actual projected, and see if they match with the local size towns, which I have an idea they'd probably be pretty close. More spill than the others around.
What I don't like about this is that it only has data up to 2021.
Mhm.
So
it's before that. Yeah.
So add like 10% on most all of them.
omitted the convoluted years.
I think especially that you spend quite a bit of time on the commercial rate discussion and what would be affordable to a business. I think seeing what rates look like for some of the other communities in the region and close by areas in the kingdom might be beneficial for discussions with the business community about, competitive and comparative rates and such.
Would probably be one of the better ones, I would think, because they have their legal in all those businesses in town.
I know Ken Cass real well.
That and then Borsville was there. SBR.
Yep.
And then
Did you want me to talk about the consultant or did you want? We'll wait.
Yeah, it seemed like we kind of have a good draft of it, and I don't know if it's going to be needed.
Okay.
Unless folks feel like we really need a thought from an outside perspective on the ordinance. We worked on it pretty solidly for a few meetings and with JB's assistance, I think we progressed on it pretty well, other than the rate section that we're still discussing. I don't know. Anybody feel like we need a second set of eyeballs on the ordinance?
it's a good. It's a good.
But I would think it would be a paid consultant though.
Okay,
His name is Randy Bean. He used to work for DC.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
You know Randy?
yeah. And Emily and Amy probably.
Yeah, he's very familiar with pre-treatment, wastewater world. He's $78 an hour. Which I thought was pretty decent. But we like,
And I don't know if there's any, even if we wanted that, if there's any room in the grant to hire a person and if needed.
I just wanted to mention him just because.
Maybe, would it be worth maybe him having a final review of what we come up with?
That's what I was thinking. If you
Yeah.
wanted I was thinking of him as more of a second set of eyes. Maybe he could bring something to light that we didn't think of because he's real familiar with pre-trial and rates and securing future funding in your ordinance. So like bumping it up 2% every year to be able to pay for them. And
I don't know if there's room in the grant to do that if we wanted that. I don't know if Amy and Peter think it might be a good idea to have a second set of eyeballs when we have a final draft before a select board vote on it.
At this point in the game, I don't see a lot of benefit. I think mostly we're talking about, the policies that would go into the ordinance that will get adopted and talked about more, assuming that the bond vote passes. So in the next 2 months, I don't see a lot of benefit. At some point there'll be lawyers involved too. So I wouldn't leave it off the table, but I think in the short term, it probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
agree
I'm
with
not sure it would be, I'm not sure it'd be an eligible cost if we've already kind of been paying for it.
There's
Amy, you're
that
going to
too.
say something? Yeah.
Which is a very good point from Evelyn. What I was going to say is mostly just about timing. Like the committee has made a lot of the policy decisions that would need to be decided for an ordinance to go through the adoption process with the select board. But it's really early in the arc of this project for us to consider adoption. You don't actually need to adopt an ordinance until there is a system in need of management and oversight. And so I think that a better place for that independent review might be closer to construction, where we not only know what the policies are, but a lot of the details are very much closer to set. And then we could be doing some of that legal and technical peer review while the system is actually being built, so that by the time it's being commissioned, we've got a solid ordinance to underpin it and manage it.
Thank you for sharing that for us. Maybe especially a side conversation with on the tools with JB would be helpful, I think. I just wanted to, this, we're gonna end the meeting, but I just wanted to circle back to, so next meeting, Peter's gonna have some updated numbers and the updated contingency. Peter, would there be a way for you to give those numbers to JB before the meeting so we can plug those into the spreadsheet?
Yes, I would think that could happen pretty seamlessly.
And I think it'll be critical for us to have a range of scenarios that JB could develop after she gets her numbers on the worst case, maybe over $1 million that we're gonna potentially bond for, and the best case of 0. And so we can potentially share those numbers with the public. And
Yeah,
when
that
we're
makes
looking at the scenarios of the capital costs versus the O&M costs and the tiering, and how they play in together.
Agreed, yep.
Any other thoughts, items before we end our meeting? Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We are adjourned.
Thank you
Good work,
very much.
guys.
Right, take
Thank
care.
you. Have a good night.
Right.
Take care.
Thank you. I have some flyers here if anybody